It was the kind of morning that promised nothing out of the ordinary, clouds drifting lazily over the quiet skyline of Young-gyu, Yongin. The streets were still damp from a light overnight drizzle. And in the residential complex tucked away near the edge of the city, life stirred just like any other day. One parked car under the shadow of a low-rise apartment building. Time had already stopped. At approximately 8:07 a.m. on August 4, 2025, a longtime acquaintance of actor Song Young-gyu approached the vehicle after noticing it hadn't moved since the previous night. What followed next would ignite a wave of grief across the nation. The 52-year-old actor was found lifeless in the driver's seat. The windows slightly fogged. His body still, his phone silent. The man who once brought so many characters to life had quietly exited the stage of his own. When police arrived on the scene, led by Lieutenant Park Min-jae of the Dongyeongan police station, the atmosphere was thick with dread and disbelief. No sign of struggle, Lieutenant Park later told reporters. No forced entry. No external wounds. And most notably, no suicide note. Just silence. Was this silence that would become the center of an investigation? One that peeled back the curtain on a life already unraveling long before that final morning. And as Korea began to mourn, what emerged was a chilling portrait of a man who had been fighting his demons quietly, invisibly, and, ultimately, alone. For 3 decades, Song Young-gyu was a steady, not spectacular, presence in Korean entertainment. He debuted in 1994 in the children's musical The Harry Guru, where he played a playful character that quickly made him beloved among young audiences. But it was his transition into television and film that earned him deeper respect from industry peers. In dramas such as Reply 1988, Remember, War of the Sun, Undercover, Suriname, and the critically acclaimed Stove League, he exuded a quiet versatility. His roles were rarely flashy, but they left an impact. Always the reliable elder, the mentor, the man with quiet strength. And yet, for all his on-screen steadiness, Song's personal life was becoming increasingly fragile. In interviews throughout the years, he'd always been private, offering only vague allusions to his struggles. But according to industry insiders, the past 5 years had been particularly cruel. As demand shifted toward younger, idol-like actors, the number of scripts arriving at his door had dwindled. By 2024, Song was relying heavily on theater work to keep afloat, supplementing what little he earned from film and television with sporadic voice-over gigs and promotional appearances. To make matters worse, his wife, whose name remains withheld out of respect for the family's privacy, had invested in a cafe business during the pandemic. For a time, it seemed like a hopeful venture. Song even made surprise visits to greet customers, and shaking hands with fans. But like many small businesses in Korea, the cafe suffered massive losses amidst rising rents and shrinking customer traffic. By late 2024, the business had folded. Financial strain became unbearable, and according to one close friend, Song began living separately from his wife and 2 children. Felt like he had failed as a husband, as a father. And confided, he didn't want to burden them with his problems. Downward spiral deepened in June 2025 when Song was arrested for driving under the influence. The night of June 19, he had reportedly met with a colleague in Young-gyu and consumed alcohol. Rather than call a chauffeur service or wait out the effects, he chose to drive home. Police stopped him around 11:12 p.m., and a breathalyzer revealed a blood alcohol concentration of 0.089%, above the legal limit and sufficient for an immediate license revocation. News of the incident spread like wildfire. Korean netizens, never known for gentle commentary, ended with full force. Comment sections under news articles were flooded with vitriol. Another drunk celebrity, one read, him in jail, said another. Within 24 hours, Song released a statement to Ilgan Sports, trying to take responsibility. Stupid. A single mistake, and I destroyed everything, he said. I am deeply sorry to those who trusted me. The fallout was immediate and brutal. The production team behind SBS's Try had already completed filming several scenes with Song. They would re-edit his parts out as much as possible. In a drama Aishiting followed suit, stating that they would reduce his screen time. Most painful of all was his forced withdrawal from the stage play Shakespeare in Love, which had marked his long-awaited return to theater. What was left was silence, and shame. He disappeared after that. A colleague from the play later shared. He stopped returning messages. We tried to reach him. He said he needed time away. I never imagined. According to sources within his agency, there were attempts to rehabilitate his image, quietly, delicately. But Song himself had grown distant. No longer answered calls from producers. Friends who dropped by his home said he would barely speak. He just sat there, watching old black and white films, one friend said. Sometimes he would cry without realizing it. But the public scrutiny didn't stop. Online forums continued to post speculative threads about his mental health, his marriage, and even his alleged debt. Malicious YouTubers circulated rumors that Song had borrowed heavily from investors during his wife's failed cafe venture. Though none of it was confirmed, the damage was done. In a culture where image and honor are closely guarded, this character assassination proved devastating. Police later revealed that in the weeks following the DUI incident, Song had deactivated most of his social media accounts and changed his phone number. It was like he was slowly retreating from the world, said an anonymous industry peer. Almost like he was preparing to disappear. Still, even those closest to him couldn't predict the final outcome. When Lieutenant Park Min-jae of Dong-yongan Police Station began the investigation on August 4, he was initially cautious about ruling anything out. At first glance, it didn't appear to be suicide, he admitted. There was no note. No self-inflicted wounds. The side of the car told a different story. According to Lieutenant Park, the car had been neatly arranged. Song's ID and phone were on the passenger seat, alongside a half-finished script and a bottle of water. The air conditioning had been left running overnight until the car's battery died. Everything pointed to someone who wanted peace, Park said. There was no panic, no chaos. The man making peace with his decision. An autopsy later ruled out foul play. Toxicology reports showed no presence of drugs, but signs of severe physical exhaustion and stress-related insomnia. The medical examiner noted that his cause of death was likely a cardiac event induced by prolonged emotional trauma, a quiet, internal unraveling. He died with no note, but he left behind clues. On his phone, investigators found an unsent message addressed to his wife. It read, "I'm sorry I couldn't be better." No name. No context. Just that sentence. There's also a folder titled Final Rehearsals. Fragments of a journal. Lines scribbled from Shakespeare's plays. And a photo of his children when they were still toddlers. He didn't say goodbye in words, said a longtime friend. Everything he left behind spoke volumes. In the days that followed, the entertainment world was plunged into mourning. Tributes came pouring in from co-stars, directors, and fans. On Instagram, actress Kim Sun-young, his co-star in Undercover, wrote, "He was gentle, humble, and always asked how you were doing first. He carried more pain than he ever let on." Memorial events were held in Seoul, Busan, and his hometown of Incheon. Fans held candlelight vigils and uploaded montages of his scenes on YouTube. Their titles heartbreakingly similar: "You Deserve Better," "The Actor Who Made Us Feel Seen," "Gone Too Quietly." Even the harshest critics fell silent. The funeral took place on the morning of August 6 at the Davos Hospital Funeral Home in Yongan. He was laid to rest at Hambaksin Memorial Park, surrounded by flowers, tears, and, at long last, understanding. At a press briefing that afternoon, Lieutenant Park Min-jae made a final statement. Officially confirmed there was no third-party involvement in the death of Mr. Song Young-gyu. Our investigation concludes that prolonged psychological stress, exacerbated by public pressure and personal hardship, contributed to his passing. He did not leave a suicide note. He asked that the nation treat this moment with compassion, not speculation. He paused. "I have seen many cases. This one stays with me. Because sometimes, it's not the loud cries for help that are the most urgent. It's the silence. The silence in that parked car in Yongan. Silence in the messages left unsent. The silence in an actor who made millions feel seen but felt invisible himself. Perhaps that silence is what we need to listen to the most."